Hi, Haunted Family. Welcome back to another episode. So, since childhood and that one Poltergeist movie, mirrors have always kind of freaked me out a little bit. I still have mirrors in my house, and if I see a really awesome mirror out, I might end up picking it up. But that doesn't mean I don't think mirrors are a little weird. This episode is all about people who have had freaky, scary, weird experiences with mirrors. Sit back, enjoy the show, and if you like what you hear, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Story 1. The Dresser Mirror. This story is all about an evil dresser, and it all happened when I was about 12 years old. The old lady who lived across the street from us died, and my mom bought a dresser from her estate sale. As soon as we brought it home, strange things began to happen. The dresser was an antique, with drawers and a large mirror. Once, my mom heard a little girl laughing and singing. At night, she sat up in bed, and as soon as she did, the giggling and singing stopped. I was asleep in my mom's bed, and my sister wasn't born yet. And then we moved from where we were renting, and we moved into another house that had just been built. My mom started hearing whistling and doors slamming. She heard feet running up and down the hall at night. It would go from my room, where the dresser was, to my mom's room. She would run to my room, and I would be there, sound asleep. I also asked my mom if there had been an earthquake, because I had seen my stuffed animals bouncing around. There hadn't been an earthquake. When my sister was about a year and a half old, it started bothering her. She said that her bed started bouncing. Mom picked the mattress up and dropped it to see if something was making the bed move. It then started calling my sister's name. My sister would ask Mom if Mom was the one calling her, but Mom would always reply no. Mom hated it that it was talking to my sister. We then went to a graveyard for some reason or another, and the calling intensified. One night, not long after the graveyard visit, I screamed bloody murder, and I ran out of my room as fast as I could. My mom met me in the hall. I told her there was a little girl in my dresser mirror. That was it. That was the final straw for my mother. She got rid of the mirror, and we've never been bothered again. Story 2. Blurred Image. My grandfather is in the scrapping hauling business, and often helps businesses clean out their old junk. He liked to take little things that were going to be thrown away, that he thought might be useful. I'd been complaining that I needed a mirror for my room for some time. It just so happened that my grandfather was called out to clean out a clothing store. My grandfather cleaned out their building and came upon a mirror. He asked if he could take it, and the manager eagerly told him he could. We would soon find out why the manager was so eager to get rid of the mirror. The mirror was full length and beautiful. I think the frame was mahogany. It was a great mirror, but it had one very big flaw that my grandfather hadn't noticed. You could not clearly see yourself in the mirror. When you looked into the mirror, everything was completely blurry. My grandpa dismissed it and said that someone probably did something wrong when making the mirror, and that he could throw it out for me if I wished. I'm not quite sure why, but I wanted the mirror anyways. I told him no, it'll be fine. It's not really that bad. I just need to be able to see if my clothes match. A few days went by, and I used the mirror just to see if the color of my shirt matched the color of my jeans, 'cause that's pretty much all you could see, color. One day I was trying to look past color and see what my new hoodie looked like on me. While looking deeply into the mirror, I noticed something that should have been noticed from the get-go. I never noticed the things in the mirror around me, just myself. Everything in the background was clear. Just the image of yourself was distorted in the mirror. It was so weird, like something out of the Twilight Zone or something. Somehow I managed to put it out of my mind. I didn't see the harm a mirror could do. I went to school, and all the other not-so-fun things that I do, then returned to my room, sat on the bed, and began trying to get a rock out of the bottom of my shoe. It was stuck in one of the little rubber grooves. I managed to pry the rock out, and it went flying across the room and hit the mirror. It caused a very subtle crack at the top left-hand corner of the mirror. I didn't throw the mirror out because it was just a small crack, but for some reason I felt drawn to the freaky mirror. I put on my iPod and went to sleep. The next morning I woke and got dressed, then looked in the mirror. This was the first extremely strange event. The crack in the mirror was gone. It was completely repaired. It was like that crack never existed. I quickly turned the mirror around because I no longer wanted to look at it. But I was also strangely fascinated by it, that I still failed to throw it out. When I returned home from school that evening, I found that the mirror was facing right again. I simply figured that my mom had came into my room and noticed the mirror turned around and turned it back the right way. I sat on my bed and began to do my homework. Have you ever walked into one of those glass walls in the funhouse? How it seems to vibrate in its frame and make a really weird whang sound? Well, that's exactly what I heard. I looked around and saw nothing out of place, but in the corner of my eye, I saw a reflection in the mirror. I looked over at the mirror, and suddenly, I saw two translucent palms smack the glass on the mirror. I heard the boing sound again. I jumped up. It happened again. I watched as the glass shook in the frame. I flung my ballpoint pen at the mirror, not quite sure what it was going to do to help, but hoping that it would. A large crack appeared in the mirror and spread down the middle. Suddenly, the mirror seemed to explode out at me. I closed my eyes and shielded my face. I could feel little shards of glass slashing my hands. When I felt like all the glass had fell, I opened my eyes and looked at my hands to see the damage, and they were fine. My hands didn't have so much as a scratch on them. I looked at the mirror and saw no crack, no visible damage whatsoever. This was the final straw. I tied the mirror to my bike and grabbed a shovel, and I headed to the cemetery, which wasn't far from my house. I didn't care who saw me. I began to dig a hole. It took me about a half an hour to make a suitable hole, but I finally did. I stuck the mirror in the hole, making sure to break it as I did. I began to place the dirt over the mirror. This took all of 15 minutes. I stomped on the dirt to make sure the grave was sealed. The mirror was out of my life, and it has been ever since. I really wonder what was in that mirror. Story 3. Footprint in the glass. The house I live in is about 40 years old, and I'm not really sure of its history, but I know that I have some kind of spirit living here. The occurrences only happen every once in a while. Let me tell you about the one that made me a believer. My aunt and I were sitting in my living room, talking one day, when all of a sudden we heard a crash from the back of the house. We went to investigate, and when we looked in my spare room, there was a mirror that had been sitting on top of a shelf, lying on the floor, face up, with what looked like a big footprint right in the middle of it. Nothing else was broken, just a footprint. There was no wind in the room. The AC wasn't on. My aunt mentioned that right before we heard this crash, she had seen a black shadow going down the hall, like someone walking down the hall. That is what I told her, that ever since I'd moved in, my son had seen a shadow person. Story 4. House of Mirrors. I remember when I was young, we always used to visit my grandparents' home. Their house was about 15 minutes from our own house. I never liked visiting them. Their house was only a few yards away from an old cemetery, and as much as I loved my Nana and Gramps, things about their house scared me. My grandfather had lived in that house his whole life. His first wife had died, and he had remarried. The woman he remarried, I referred to as my Nana. My Nana's first husband had also died. The two families had become like one, much like the Brady Bunch. Not every room in the house scared me, but certain rooms made me want to start crying and run. My mom told me the reason I feared some rooms was because of all the old things in the rooms. If I learned something about them, they wouldn't scare me anymore. Perhaps she was right about some of the rooms. They all had old things cluttering the shelves, but it was more than that. The feeling I got when I entered certain areas of the house frightened me, more than I really know how to describe. It was a feeling one might get when sitting alone in a pitch-black room. I was almost expecting a ghost or dead body to fall in front of me. The first thing that frightened me were the mirrors in every room. I had never liked large mirrors at night. During the day, they were a source of beautification, but even the old antique mirrors frightened me during the day. I had had bad experiences with the house itself, which was another reason it scared me. I remember falling asleep when my parents were visiting and waking up at midnight. My parents were gone. They had left me overnight for fear of waking me up as they carried me to the car. I was only 5, so waking up in what I thought was my bed, only to find out that it was an old dusty guest room, made my heart stop. I began to scream. I remember that night so well. There were more things about that house that made me feel uneasy. The bathroom was huge, bigger than my own room at home, with 2 big mirrors that were placed on either side of the wall, and many old antique glass sculptures that adorned the countertop. The curtained shower was across from the toilet, and the curtain was heavy and white, and so, being inside the shower, felt like being locked in a pure white room. But the thing that scared me about that room the most was the laundry chute. It was built into the floor, and opened like an ordinary cupboard. I remember once, I had my toy doll with me, when I opened the laundry chute to look down. Suddenly, as though someone had knocked it from my hand, the doll flew down the chute and hit the basement floor beside the washing machine. I began to cry. My plastic doll had lost her leg in the terrible accident. I told my mom, and she sent me down to get it. Only, upon searching the whole laundry room, I found my doll was gone, and only a cracked plastic leg remained. Out of all the rooms in the house, that frightened me. The guest room, the study, my grandfather's room, the master bedroom, the bathroom, the dining hall. It was the basement that gave me awful nightmares, dreams, and bad feelings. My dad told me that once his sister had locked him down there when he was 3, and ever since the basement had scared him. I remember my sister and I would go down there, looking for my Gramps' collection of birds. Not only did he have a tiny collection of china birds, but fish and boats and airplanes and a cat skull that made us quiver. The main room in the basement had a large TV with 2 comfortable chairs to sit in. But looking down that long tiled hall, one could see the bar and the pool hall. The bar was ordinary white countertop, with assortment of old dusty wine and liquor bottles that had not been opened in quite a long time. There was a huge mirror behind the bar, which reflected the back of the counter, and whoever walked past it. I remember seeing the reflection of an old, pale woman quivering in the glass as I walked past. She smiled at me, and I had run so fast I thought I could never stop. I remember trying to climb the narrow, steep staircase and almost tumbling back down. The pool hall was a large room with a pool table in the center of it. There was a deer head mounted on one wall, beside a bunch of hanging ducks. Both frightened me, as I was sure I saw them move once, as though the things were alive and begging for their freedom. Off the pool room was my Gramps' memory room. It had pictures and tools from the war in which he had taught young pilots how to fly. An axe hung from the wall, which also scared me, as it was often caught swinging back and forth, as though somebody had touched it. This room then connected to a bathroom, where a stuffed alligator sat, and many dead spiders covered the floor. This then connected back into the laundry room, which in turn was the pathway to the main TV room and the stairs, thus ending a terrifying circle that was the basement level. Out of all I've explained to you, the worst was the laundry room. I'm sure something awful had happened there. As I was loading laundry, when the light suddenly went out, groping clumsily through the darkness, I saw a white form only inches from me. It took the form of a horrible, grinning, skull-like face, with many sharp teeth. Then the light went on, and I found myself standing near the wall, almost touching it. Nothing around me. With a sob, I ran up the stairs, and only once more went down there, after that, with my sister and a friend, whereupon we made it halfway into the pool room, and suddenly all 3 of us bolted up the stairs for a reason we can't really explain. I never went back down there. A couple years later, the house was sold, and my grandparents moved out.